Welcome to the Flag Bearer channel. This is Little Known Black History Facts. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Operation Large Area Coverage, Target, St. Louis, Missouri. It was supposedly an experiment to test how chemical and biological weapons would dispense over a large area. During the aftermath of World War II, the United States was doing many different things to build up its defenses, to prepare for potential attacks, and to win an arms race. All of these issues were at the center of the Cold War, and the results would sometimes lead to unethical operations and oversight. One of the biggest examples of both was the U.S. Army's poisoning of St. Louis, Missouri, and then trying to cover it up for decades. Operation Large Area Coverage, LAC, was performed to see how chemicals and biological weapons would dispense if one was ever detonated. At the time, what was used by the U.S. Army Chemical Corps was not thought to be harmful. Operation LAC took place in many areas of the United States, but in St. Louis, things took an even darker turn. The substance in question is zinc cadmium sulfide, a chemical of great controversy, not only because of its use for experiments, but also due to the decades of denial by the American government that refused to acknowledge its use. There are many concerns about the government poisoning of St. Louis, Missouri. What the Black community experienced during this time took things to a harsher level filled with lies, cover-ups, and outright abuse. During the 1950s and 60s, the U.S. Army dusted chosen American cities from coast to coast with a fine powder of fluorescent, potentially toxic chemicals. And now scientists are saying that the powder used in St. Louis may have contained radioactive material. The scientists involved used cadmium sulfide because it is similar in size to germs. Cadmium sulfide is a potentially dangerous chemical. It is toxic in large doses and is known to cause lung cancer and to damage the liver, kidneys, and bones. As part of Operation LAC, the Army mixed radioactive particles with the zinc cadmium sulfide and spread it throughout a poor, mostly black neighborhood in St. Louis. It was believed that poor people were less likely to object to strange happenings in their neighborhood, and if they did, the police would be there to control them. Zinc cadmium sulfide was reportedly chosen by the Army for its ease in detection under ultraviolet light. The Army spread zinc cadmium sulfide in St. Louis with motorized blowers perched atop low-income housing buildings, claiming at the time that the machines were part of a test for smoke screens that could guard against aerial observation by Russians. The Army put chemical sprayers on buildings, like schools and public housing projects, and mounted them in station wagons for mobile use. Despite the extent of the experiment, local politicians were not notified about the content of the testing. The greatest concentration of spraying in St. Louis was at the Pruitt-Igoe Public Housing Complex, which was home to 10,000 low-income black residents. 70% of those residents were children under the age of 12. None of the residents, nor the authorities of St. Louis, nor those of Missouri, nor the health authorities, nor the Congress were notified of the test. Army records indicate that some of the substance traveled upwards of 40 miles, carried by prevailing winds. Planes were dropping chemicals to watch disbursement patterns. Many black residents who lived through this time would watch as U.S. government officials would go on top of the Pruitt-Igoe housing project and dump a mystery mist off the roof. There were also trucks driving around mostly black neighborhoods, spreading chemicals for the experiment. Survivors say that they would watch as personnel in radioactive protective gear come into their communities and spread the chemicals among the population. Besides what looked to be a systematic experiment at the expense of blacks, the U.S. government would deny any and all wrongdoing until the 90s. Even after releasing documents showcasing that the government sprayed chemicals in St. Louis, officials would downplay the incident. Segregation was still a major factor when experiments were conducted, and as a result, many black residents rightfully felt targeted. Dropping any type of chemicals on citizens without consent is immoral regardless of the intent. Army scientists secretly sprayed St. Louis with radioactive particles for years, and then the United States government attempted to cover it up without truly making amends. LAC tests also included the dispersion of biological agents. Though they were not thought to be harmful at the time, some of the organisms used have since been shown to be potentially pathogenic in people with weakened immune systems. The St. Louis testing was linked to a now-defunct company called US Radium. The controversial company came under fire and numerous lawsuits after several of its workers were exposed to dangerous levels of radioactive materials in its fluorescent paint. US Radium had been found legally liable for producing a radioactive powdered paint that had killed many young women who had been exposed to the chemical when it was used to paint fluorescent watch towels. The compound that was sprayed upon the public was manufactured by US Radium. The Army conducted their experiments a second time from 1963 to 1965 in similar secrecy. By the 1990s, evidence of abnormal incidence of several types of cancer among former residents of the areas involved, including the Pruitt-Ego housing complex, drew the attention of researchers and forensic specialists. The Army denied that any of the materials sprayed as part of the chemical weapons research were toxic and resisted congressional inquiries. Since the tests were conducted, several links have been established, though not definitely proven, between zinc, cadmium, and varying forms of cancer. The distribution of potentially radioactive and carcinogenic material is only part of the troubles left over from the Army's testing on unknowing subjects. Growing anecdotal evidence links zinc cadmium sulfide to chronic lung and respiratory ailments such as COPD. The Pruitt-Ego housing project was abandoned in the early 1970s and destroyed by demolition over the course of several years. By late 1976, it was gone. In April 2016, the United States Army Corps of Engineers made news when it dropped the former site of Pruitt-Ego from consideration as a home for their National Geospatial Intelligence Agency Western Headquarters Complex. The Corps of Engineers did not cite a specific reason for dropping the site from consideration, despite previously reporting on its favorability. However, local authorities claim, with some support from officials with the NGA, that the site was dropped from consideration because of the presence of toxic materials contaminating the site. Persistent reports of radioactivity appear in local media and government discussions of the site. Presently, the official position of the U.S. Army remains that no harmful materials were distributed as part of the testing. Until next time, if you like little-known history facts as I do, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Press the bell to be notified of future uploads. Thank you for watching.